Magnetar Unlimited Prosperity broadcast, bringing you the news of the galactic co-prosperity sphere. Citizens of the GCPS, stay tuned for a new episode of the MUP broadcast. Listen carefully, work responsibly, earn prosperity.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Warpath lore, and specifically planet lore. We're still in the realm of talking about particular planets, and yeah, we're going to be just talking about another one today. I'm Wiki Dave, and with me, like always, I've got Claudio. How are you doing, Claudio?
Hey, Dave. I'm, as always, looking forward to the next episode, so I'm always happy to be here. So everything's fine. Let's see where we go today.
Yes, you're the teacher. I'm here to, I really do take a back seat when it comes to this because I just like listening to it. I really just take like the viewer's point of view. So I really am looking forward to this because I'm more of a panel lore person. Warpath lore, I'm a bit vegan, so I really do absorb a lot of the things you say, and I'm really excited for it. But before we dive into it, we have to go into our CorpNet news, which is this week sponsored by Jinling Corporation. When it's a Jinling, you just know. That's their slogan. There you go. So a little bit of MUP news first. We have actually Claudia's actually started a new show with Kodos called MUP Dead Zone, where they actually talk about the gameplay and actually how to actually play Dead Zone instead of just the lore side of it. Isn't that right, Claudia? I've listened to the first episode and it sounded really interesting where you guys are going to go with it.
Yeah, we dropped the first one, many more hopefully ahead. I think it was just a little gap that needed to be filled to talk about Dead Zone. Because, personally, I think it's the best tabletop game out there. You could argue that it's maybe the best skirmish game out there. But, yeah, I have to say that because I'm also working on it. I'm a part of the RC, the Dead Zone RC, so the rules committee. And, if I wouldn't think that this is a great game, I would be in the wrong place.
Yeah, you wouldn't be doing two shows about Warpath, or Dead Zone, I should say, if you didn't like it.
Exactly. And I'm really hyped to see where we will be going there. We just started out, but there are so many things to talk about. And we just did the Vault updates. We talked about them here a bit in the last shows, because it was also something that, had more characterization for the customization for the armies. So that was good from a lore perspective to get your own take on your forces. But there we dive into the actual stats, how they play, maybe thoughts behind them, how they could be used. So it's more in depth. And I think we will do that if more Vault releases will be coming their way. But there is also many other things to talk about regarding Dead Zone, and I think there isn't that much out there to listen to in the form of podcasts for Dead Zone. The other games have a bit more coverage, so personally I think it's not only something I wanted to do, but also something that might be useful and needed and fun for others to listen to.
Yeah. And we're doing this hobby anyway, and just having a way of kind of getting our voices up to how we feel about the game is part of how we enjoy the hobby. And so what we're going to be doing going forward is what we do here for the Warpath lore side of things. We're just going to be talking about the lore. So any kind of Vault releases, unless it's kind of lore specific, we won't be bringing up here in the news section. So we're going to be trying strictly stay with just talking about any lore releases or anything related to that. So unfortunately with Warpath at the moment, when I say Warpath, I mean the Warpath universe, Dead Zone, Firefight, even Dreadball, which we're going to bring up in a second. There's not that many lore releases, so we really want to just highlight when that information does come out, that news does come out. So it's going to be very interesting going forward, seeing the two shows, how we're going to evolve. But if you've got any questions about the gameplay, head up the guys at the MUP Dead Zone shows. You can leave a comment underneath the YouTube, or even just send a message on to us via email, and vice versa for us if you just want to talk about the lore. So that way we can kind of keep it separate, and also make sure we get to your question, because we do get a few here and there. So with that first bit of news out of the way, I think we'll move on to the other bit of news that came out since the last episode, Dreadball All-Stars. So they gave us a little bit more information, Mantic Games, about what Dreadball All-Stars is going to be. It sounds like it's going to be less about kind of teams, like having one kind of race as a team, and more of kind of individual players. And I don't know if it's going to be a smaller form of the game, but I kind of get the impression it's kind of like All-Star basketball, as they kind of water it down a little bit, and they don't really. And it's more of it for a show, and so it's a little bit quicker pace, if that makes sense. What about you, Claudio? What's your impressions from what they actually released? And we'll post this in the links below, by the way, of the kind of video that they released about Dreadball All-Stars.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get that much information yet, but I think it's the same as you said. I think they will break it down, don't have the 24 teams maybe, but we'll focus on a more maybe boxed game experience. It's completely how I think it is. I don't know actually if it's that way or not. So I think maybe a bit more approachable. Hopefully, if they use the plastic from Halo, I could see them using not something else, but the same material, and the Halo miniatures look really good for the material they are using. So having nice looking minis, and maybe not 24 teams right from the get-go. As Ronnie also mentioned, that was a bit of a killer for Dreadball, that nothing new was around the corner. Everything dropped at once and was a bit too much. So I hope they will be going down like maybe the Champions path, where you start this one's being a Kickstarter, but we start with a few teams, and then maybe they have the option to get more, like every few months, every couple of months, keeping it fresh, keeping it interesting. And for us also, hopefully adding a bit more of lore, because Dreadball, we already mentioned it a few times, you mentioned it a few times, that Dreadball was so important and good for the world building, for bringing different races, species, planets, environments, interactions into this universe, making it lived in. And I really hope from a lore perspective it will be doing the same. From a player perspective, I've never really got into Dreadball. I had Extreme, I have Overdrive, I've played it a few times, but so many games to play, and
not enough time.
No time. It never really connected with my play group. So I'm looking forward. Maybe this time it will be more playing, but then again, I'm also just there for the people who enjoy it, for people to have something else to play that isn't about strictly killing each other, and having more in the Warpath universe is always a good thing.
Well, people do die during Dreadball, but I think one of the things is with the way you should always approach it. You're not going to be able to play every game. No, Firefight's not always going to be like for people that play Dead Zone. Dead Zone's not always going to be for people that play Dreadball, and then vice versa all the way back to Firefight. So it's really about making sure that you don't feel obligated. You're forced to come play the games if you want to be part of this world. You can be part of this world, but only like one of those games. And with Dreadball, I think it's a good opportunity of bringing back so many characters that were introduced. Like Lucky Logan is a good character that's a little bit iconic. And there's I think Crypt was one of my favorites. He was just I can't remember what was he. It was a Christian. Crystal Lillian? The humanoid crystals. Yeah, that's it. And he was like this green one, and there was also the what's those kind of wormy ones? Oh, I can't remember their names at the top of my head. I am going to quickly look up at a store for time. Oh, what was it? It's like there was the oozes.
Okay, the users.
There was the oozes, but that was one that was like it, and then there was this kind of like it's elastopod.
Yes.
Yeah, and they kind of look like kind of weird caterpillar things, and there's flurple and a schnorkel, which are really kind of because there's those kind of races that you don't see in Firefight, you don't see in Dead Zone, but saw in Dreadball, and I really hope we see a little bit more. And there's a bunch of races that we've seen characters of, but we don't know what the race names are. There's I think there's 2 announcers that were kind of through Dreadball that we couldn't actually put what races they were. So there's so much more we can discover with Dreadball. So it'd be very interesting to see what they do with it, and I'm really excited. So the Kickstarter, from what the post said later 2025, so the second half of 2025. They've got a few other Kickstarters going. I think they got Assassin's Creed going as well later in the 2025. So we're going to have a few Kickstarters. So it'd be good to keep an eye out on that. And most likely, if it's kickstarting in the later half of 2025, most likely late 2026 is when we'll probably get it. So at least we'll have something to talk about and speculate from now until then. So that'll be really exciting.
What I find really cool is you liked the idea of cloning. You've said it many times here already, and Ronnie actually doubled down on that he, if I'm remembering correctly in the interview or a short video he did, that the aspect of cloning maybe some of the players where they are injured and you bring them back onto the pitch. The one that you're bringing onto the pitch isn't the player who was injured, because it would take much longer to be able to play again. So that the cloning might be a bigger aspect, especially for an all-star game where you really don't just have another Jack or a striker there, but you have the named characters. I think that will be really fun to explore in the lore. So how good is cloning actually?
Logan. Yeah, Lucky Logan. The reason why he's iconic is because he's died like 13 times and he keeps on getting cloned.
Yeah.
And there was one clone of Lucky Logan actually called Creed, because they thought he died, but really he fell into, I believe, like a portal or something. He was killed, and then they kind of lost him, and then he came out of the portal again, and he was the 10th clone of Lucky Logan. So he's been cloned a lot of times. So that's the reason why I mentioned Lucky Logan, because he's got clones. Not all of them are dead. So it'd be interesting to see whether they kind of run with that kind of idea. And also, I mean, with every sci-fi universe, the clones aren't always perfect, and there's always like a flaw sometimes to clones. So are we going to explore if there are flaws to clones? Do they feel more pain? Are they resentful of the fact they're clones? It'll be interesting from a story point of view to see whether there's anything done with that.
Personally, as a reps enjoyer and sympathizant, I hope that there will be like an ethical question. So is it really okay to have all-star players who just die and are mutilated on the pitch every game, just with clones waiting to be activated or brought in to replace them over and over and over again? I mean, we know that GCPS doesn't really care about ethical issues, but there are people who care, and that's what the rebellion is building upon. So this could be really a nice take into this aspect of Dreadball being the big sports event, distracting the masses from the actual problems, but bringing in, or maybe birthing new problems in the form of this, now maybe more known cloning, or maybe the reps hack something and so on. So I could see that for a lore perspective to be a big part of Dreadball. I hope so.
I mean, imagine if the reps got hold of the cloning material and cloned one of the council.
Oh, yes. I mean, cloning itself opens up so many story paths, and it's always hard because it opens also a few backdoors that maybe shouldn't be opened, but cloning was always a part of the Warpath universe, and until now it's never been a problem, so I don't think it will be something that is now, okay, we have an enforcer hero like Howlett, and we just clone him 300 times and throw 300 crazy murder machines somewhere.
You realize you
it's
just
effective.
did the plot of the Star Wars, right?
Yeah, I know.
Isn't that what happened in Star Wars? They just cloned a whole bunch of New Zealanders and they took over the universe. But yeah, I see the point. But I guess with the cloning, I think it's a question of, and because it's not really established, how common knowledge is cloning. Because Lucky Logan was always seen as the original, but in reality, it was cloned this many times in secret. So I think maybe this All Stars could open the door of the fact of the ability to clone is now more public knowledge. So what happens when the public, especially Rebs, find out about that ability?
Yeah, that's the question, if it really is public knowledge, because I think they will mask it as, okay, he's just, in the infirmary for 2 rounds and will be back on the pitch in no time because advanced medical care and so on. So I don't think it will be something where they say, okay, we have so many clones, because that also takes a bit away the action, or the danger. If there will be clones, it's not as nice to look at as a person interested in Dreadball.
If you knew you couldn't die, you'd be more reckless.
Yeah. And also, if a clone dies, you say, well, they have enough other clones. If you think the one player is a unique player and one of the best of his generation, or its generation, I think it's better for the Dreadball corporations to keep it secret that it's cloning, but I think it has to come out for it to work somehow. The reps gaining access to it or something, because cloning in Dreadball isn't something new. We have it, as you said, with Lucky Logan, but also with the Z faction. The Zs are clones, and that is known, but they aren't like humans, and they are genetically designed.
Yeah, I really want, because the Zs are basically the same kind of base, but every corporation has a slight variation to a Z. And so I really hope they do more with that. I think we should stop talking about this, because we're entering a rabbit hole that could go down many paths with this. It's either way. This is just one aspect of Dreadball All Stars that will be interesting to discover from a lore point of view. So if you have any questions about Dreadball All Stars or anything coming up for the lore, just flick us through. We're more than happy to have a chat with it. But you can see how we can easily go down a rabbit hole with any topic. So
it's a perfect example of only having a few tidbits about Dreadball, a game, and how it affects us thinking about the overall lore and going deeper and deeper. So, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, for the last bit of news, because we're still in the news segment, is that, Claudio, you know more about this than I do. We've got a Firefight/Dead Zone update on the horizon, and there's not long until Epic Warpath. So there's potentially a lot of lore that could be dropped over the next few months. Have you got any insight for us there, being on the Rules Council? Oh, no, Rules Committee. Sorry. I always call it Council, because Council sounds cooler, but Rules Committee.
You can call it however you want, I think.
Council's better. I think Council's better. I think Law Council and Rules Committee, I think that's the way the two, they should be split up.
Yeah, but the everything in the Warpath universe could be the Rules Council of 7, but we are in 7. But anyway, yeah. I only a few things so that I don't spoil too much, and Mantic is coming after me, but we already heard on the Controlled Fire podcast an interview with the RC for Firefight, and they dropped that they are or have been working on an update, and the same goes for Dead Zone. So there will be a big balancing update for Dead Zone coming. It will be using the same as the Firefight, will be using the companion and the digital service we get now for making this update possible, but it will be more than only balancing. It will be the biggest thing for Dead Zone since its 3rd edition release. Over the last year, we've been working for this on this update, so this will be big, yeah. While the Firefight one is more really looking for the balancing aspect. They just had last year the really, really good command protocols. So Dead Zone will have a big treatment too, and there will be something for the narrative gamers on top of that. So for the lore enthusiasts, for those who really want to set the scene, there will be plenty of it in there too, besides the obvious balance changes. So this will be something where we will surely have to discuss possibilities. I mean, we will cover it in the Dead Zone segment too, but maybe it's also something for a lore perspective and not only a gameplay perspective. So yeah.
I think considering how much of a rabbit hole we went down with just the concept of cloning, I think just the
we
lore,
will be fine.
We'll be fine just talking about just the lore side of things. I think we really could analyze it. But that's what the cool thing is about having these two shows is really, if you care about the rules, only care about the gameplay, you got Mupp Dead Zone now. But if you just want to talk about the lore, but you don't really care about the gameplay, you don't need to worry about all those rules, you can come here. We're also, Tam, one of the newest editor, is actually thinking about starting the Mupp Firefight show as well. So we could have that going as well. We're ready to suit anything that you want to talk about in the universe. You'll have a show on Mupp 4, and that's what's really exciting about that. Also, if we also just keep in mind that you can still buy the First Strike Alpha Edition book from Wing Tassar. I believe you can get the digital one from Mantic as well. Make sure you go and support it. Obviously, the more sales they get on their end, more likely we're going to get more. I do know they have a few things cooking as well. But the best way of showing your support is to show with your wallet at the end of the day.
I've already pre-ordered the paperback.
Yeah, I want the paperback. I think it's good. The problem is that whenever I order anything, it's always like a couple of weeks before it arrives. So I think it should be on pre-order. It should be out soon. I'll reach out to Brandon and see if I can get an actual date. Because from my understanding, it should have already dropped the physical copy, but we'll see. I'll reach out to him. I'm going to actually try and get a few signed copies that we can give away as well. I'll see
that would be cool, yeah.
That would be really cool. Anyway.
And if you don't know what that is, we've made an episode.
Yes, we made an episode
with the author, so go listen to that.
Yes. So, I mean, if you ever interested in any of the shows that we do talk about, we do make playlists for everything. So if you just want to jump into a particular game that the Mantic Universe podcast does cover, we have a playlist you can just dive into. Like if you want to know about Panathol lore, we've got a big playlist that of me and Mark just talking about it. We're starting to build up a nice little catalog that we're hopefully, if you like a Mantic game, there's something for you, and that's what we really hope to do here at Mupp, and that's the whole idea. And we're going to start our live action stuff. That's going to start happening in a couple of weeks. So, well, actually, by the time you're hearing this, it should be maybe this week that you're hearing this. We'll find out. Either way, check out our YouTube channel. Anyway, I think we've done the news enough. So yeah, that was CorpNet News, sponsored by the Genling Corporation. When it's a Genling, you just know. And now we are going to dive into the main topic for this podcast, and it is about Cabot III. Is that right to say?
Yes, Cabot III.
Yep.
It's a not as well-known planet, but maybe even because of that, I really wanted to use it to shine a bit of light on the topic, because I think this is something that might have been overlooked, especially if you're a veteran player, because it's a bit newer lore coupled together or bolted on top of old lore, and this could be something that changes the universe. So, yeah,
forever.
Not as known planet, especially in the GCPS. I think many people, most people won't know this planet in universe, but we will see why it's so important.
Yeah, and it covers one of the races I think has the potential of being one of the more unique races in the Warpath universe, and that's the Marauders. I think when people say Marauders, they don't really know. We're talking about orcs, and I think that's the thing why I think throws people off. The orcs in the Warpath universe aren't the typical, Warhammer orcs where they're just kind of savage and they're all over the show. They're uncontrollable. These orcs that we have are ex-slaves, but they're also a lot more. They're a lot smarter. They're a lot more strategic, and they're a lot more grounded than your typical orcs that you would normally see. So that's why I'm really looking forward to hearing about this episode, because it talks about the Mandrake Rebellion, which is probably the most if not the most important bit, I would say, in the current timeline of Warpath. Mm-hmm. This is such a significant event that happens, which I really hope one day they expand more into, maybe in a book form, similar like they've done with the Rise of Celestians when they do Penethor. They talk about the arrival of Celestians, kind of lay the groundwork why that was so significant. It would be awesome to see a similar treatment done here with the Mandrake Rebellion, which I'll let Claudio kind of dive more into when he's ready.
Yeah, I think the Marauders are a great addition to the universe. As you said, they are not only orcs, most of them are orcs. We have also goblins, hulks, and so on, a few other races, hobgoblins, exactly. And they originate from the planet Gora, so they are also called the Gorans. And Gora is a planet that is now really closely watched by the Enforcers, the Council of Seven, and the GCPS in general, because as you already mentioned, we had the biggest rebellion, the biggest uprising in the GCPS ever, and that was the Mandrake Rebellion. It's been a while. The Mandrake Rebellion itself, I will just cover it rather shortly because otherwise we will be sitting here 3 hours only talking about the Mandrake Rebellion. Maybe we can dive a bit more into details.
We're doing an event if you want to. Yeah.
Yes. So the Mandrake Rebellion we had it's now about 150 years ago in universe, where the Marauders were used as shock troopers. So the GCPS found Gora. They found the inhabitants there, especially the Gorans, the orcs, and the green-skinned brutes were formidable fighters. And because of the radiation of the sun over Gora, they were tougher than most other species, and they were stuck in like a warlike situation on their planet. So they were always fighting, and because of environmental effects, were even tougher than others. But they aren't just savages fighting against each other the whole time, because fighting also involves tactics. So they were also good and intelligent fighters, and the GCPS used that for their advantage. They incorporated them, and then they had the perfect shock troopers for their expansion. Everything seemed fine, until it didn't. And
as always, things are, right?
It's just the way it goes. And once again, it also shows that it's not only happening because of bad luck. A bit like in our last episode on Exum, where we thought it was bad luck that the atmosphere changed or the weather changed on Exum, but in reality it was the Forge Fathers all along who just shifted the balance. So the same goes for the Mandrake Rebellion. Everything is fine, but the Council of Seven, which was established, wanted more power. And they staged the rebellion. They staged that the Marauders rebelled against their GCPS overlords, but they didn't think it would go as well for them as it did. So everything got out of hand, and the Marauders, in the end, could break free, but could also be contained because of the fact that the council knew that the rebellion was coming. It was just much harder to contain than they thought initially. So, in the end, status quo is that the Marauders live freely in the GCPS and in the whole universe. Most of them are soldiers for hire. Most of them fight in little groups and are usually seen fighting also for the GCPS, for corporations that hire them because they are still really good troopers. They still use the old equipment they got during this time, so 150 years ago, and they are still loyal to the payer. And everyone knows that. Interesting part is most humans think the Marauders are just stupid brutes because of their looks. I mean, They look like orcs, they look brutish, they are savage, they are intelligent, most don't know that, but they are also savage. So they have both these traits. They are still orcs, as we know them from fantasy and science fiction, but with a really interesting touch of being, if you want to fight, if you're fighting the whole time, you can only succeed if you know your tactics, if you are using your equipment and your manpower as best as possible.
Yeah, so the way you should say it is the rest of the universe sees the Marauders like we know orcs, like savage, out of control, kind of dumb. But in reality, they're actually smart, and that's what makes them super interesting to see which way they're going. Because I think normally in lore and other universes, we see them savage, out of control, taking over. But what happens when orcs are smart and think strategically? How does that play out? I think that's going to be really super interesting to see how Marauders actually evolve.
Yeah, and I think the look and also the names for them, the normal Marauder orc units are called commandos. Really, show once again how they should be treated if you know if you know how they really are, so intelligent and cunning. And I think is in the first short story compilation, the Containment Protocols, I think it was, there is a short story about a Marauder group that gets hired by a corporation, and they sent a negotiator who even studied them at university and studied their culture and everything. But even he doesn't know how they really are. So he talks then to a goblin, because the humans think the goblins are the more intelligent ones, whereas the orcs are more the brutish ones. So the classic trope we also have in fantasy and other systems. And the fun part is that the orcs sitting around the table know exactly that. So they use it to their advantage to uphold this front.
And that's a sign of intelligence right there.
Exactly. They are just talking. They know that the goblin will be talking, and they make brutish sounds just so to throw him off, to the negotiator off. So it's a really fun little thing, and I think it's perfect to showcase how they use it, because usually the GCPS then thinks, well, they are shock troopers, they are brutes, they will just charge right straight at us, but in the end they have tactical geniuses amidst their ranks. So that's really cool to see.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
So the Marauders are the focus now for Cabot, but there is another important factions. We've already talked about them a few times. The Enforcers, of course. And the Enforcers also have like the same birth story for this universe with the Mandrake Rebellion. Because the Mandrake Rebellion was meant to get rid of the orcs, of the orc shock troops that the corporations used, and the Council of Seven wanted to cull the uprising by bringing in their new superhuman soldiers, the Project Ichiban, which was a secret project, the name for the Enforcer program, that took a while to establish, and many other things happened. Again, something we could go into detail a bit more, but in the end, the idea was to have these human super soldiers that then would crush the Orc Rebellion and be the saviors of the humanity, and everyone knows who was responsible for having these super soldiers and saving the humanity, the Council of Seven. So the idea was to use these new enforcers to get a better grip of the GCPS as a whole. So to have more power.
It all comes down to that.
I mean, yeah, always. And I mean, it somehow worked. It wasn't as it didn't work as well as they planned, again, because they didn't think that the orcs or the Marauders could organize themselves as well as they did, but still they succeeded. And now we also have a specialized battalion of enforcers that are overlooking Gora. So because it's off limits in a way that it's completely controlled who goes in there to the system, who gets out, so that there won't be a second big uprising from the Marauders, because that's something they are fearing. If they unite again, it could get really really bad really quickly. So they have the Black Company that's specialized in Enforcer Strike Team, and they are patrolling the area and always also looking in the whole galaxy for marauder groups that are getting a bit too big, a bit too ambitious to cull them down. And they try to sell it as some accidents. So maybe a McKinley drive that has a catastrophic malfunction. Maybe they got some biotech lab thing that then exploded and killed the whole group. Some contracts that maybe aren't really a contract, but more of a how to get rid of this group forefront. So it's interesting how the GCPS tries to not openly decimate these groups, because they fear that if they hunt them down, they will unite. So it's a balance they have to strike about killing enough marauders that are too greedy and too ambitious, and on the other hand, don't do it too openly to not raise suspicions and pave the path.
It's a subtle culling.
Yeah, exactly. Because marauders, I think, wouldn't like to know that they are being hunted.
I don't think any race likes to know that, right?
No,
it's not high on the list of great things to know about your race.
So, with all that as a bit of a groundwork to know how both factions interacted like 150 years ago, we are now looking back at the already mentioned Cabot III. That's a fourth sphere planet in the Orphic sector. And the Orphic sector is interesting because it can only be reached by ships that traverse the Cerberus Maw. And the Cerberus Maw is a ring of 3 neutron stars, and it's hard to get there because it's each of these neutron stars has a super dense mass of radioactive fire. So this presence of these 3 stars has a big impact on the gravity between the planets or also to the planets. So it's really complex and dangerous to get there in the first place. And now there's a little detail maybe that is also interesting, because it's not only about getting there, but then being there. If you have 3 really radioactive neutron stars, it has also an impact on the planets themselves there. So in 953, there was a frontier colony specialist known as Cabot, the Cabot group. So there we have the name for the planet because of that. And they did push through the Maw and started to build settlements there. They bought the licenses, where we won't go into detail there because it wasn't a big deal like the other licensing things. But hey, we got licenses here.
I'll go one episode without talking about planet licenses.
No, I'm just doing it on purpose.
It's too late. We've talked about it now. So now's another episode we talked about it.
So we have 5 planets there, all belong to the Cabot group. It was no problem. They were brave enough. No one else was outpitting them or anything. And it seemed that the sun was more stable than the 3 stars of the Maw itself. So you're going through the Cerberus Maw, and then the planets themselves have another sun. It seemed to be more stable, but it would be a hard life nonetheless. So, but as always, GCPS, new frontier, people want to make money, or people want to live, so they have to make a bit of money. They went there, and it all collapsed because of the radiation coming from the Maw was much, much higher than initially thought, and the majority of them were dead by the name of the Cabot's syndrome. So because of this radiation sickness, it's a mix of cancers and mutations, and there was no cure for that. So it doesn't sound like a nice way to go.
Sounds delightful.
Yeah. And those that did survive, they get off the planet, left the Maw, and left the prefabricated Chensik settlements behind. So our last sponsor for last episode, Chensik, those are the prefab containers and buildings. They were all over the planets and then just left behind. It was just, there were legal actions against Cabot because as the settlers tried to sue Cabot and got through with it. So Cabot as a corporation was ruined. The 5 planets were lost, but the equipment was left behind. At least the equipment they couldn't take with them. So, well, it's not worth the trouble anymore. The GCPS, the administration central, said that the whole Orphic sector is Delta grade material, so not worth any expense and nothing to profit from. So it's a cast off from the GCPS register. No one cares for a place where you have to invest so much and you even might be sued into oblivion. So they are just there and not inhabitable for the humans at least. Now come in the Marauders. We've already heard why they are so tough and why their skin is green. It all comes down to the radiation of the sun over Gora. So they have some built-in, radiation
resistance.
Resistance. Thank you. Some radiation resistance, and an Orc commander, Marshal Tang, has built his base here now. So those 5 planets, he found them. He knew it wouldn't be a risk for the Marauders, and on top of that, the infrastructure was already there because it was settled just long enough to have everything there, but then left behind quickly enough so that it was in a good shape already. They settled there. They have their base of operation now, and Tang has a plan. And Marshal Tang is, as I said, a Marauder commander, and he has a pretty big company behind him. They are called the Predators, or Tang's Predators, and they have a reputation for deadly hit-and-run raids throughout the Fringe.
But they're not the actual Predators from the movies, right?
No. They are still only orcs.
Because I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, Blaine is looking a bit like the Predator from the movies, so
he
having
does actually. Yeah.
a company of Blaine's race, which is unknown, would be scary for sure. But no, these are just called the Predators because of their hit and run tactics, and they were also employed by the corporations, and sometimes they fought against the corporations. They fought probably every single race or every single faction, not race, but every single bigger faction. They fought Asterians, Forge Fathers, Rebels, Pirates. They fought everything. They even fought against the Plague, sometimes as employees for a corporation, because one thing the Marauders have that makes them pretty good against the Plague is that they are immune to the Plague. I think for now they might be the only faction that are immune to the Plague virus, or if it's a right virus. So if you use them in a dead zone.
So just to pause there, so the Marauders are immune, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but does that mean goblins, hulks, and hobgoblins are immune too?
That's a good question. I think it's they talk about Marauders in general, so that this radiation on Gora somehow changed their immune system to be immune. As far as I know, every Marauder is, but I'm not 100% sure because it's a bit weird. The Marauders and Orcs is sometimes used as a synonym.
Yeah.
Sometimes not. So this one maybe is something.
Because we know five races that come from Gora. So we've got hobgoblins, orcs, goblins, hulks, and mole beasts. But funny enough, so I wonder if mole beasts are also if it's all the races of Gora that are immune to the plague, will mole beasts be immune as well? Because that's interesting, and it's also showing that maybe it's radiation is what can kill the plague. Because if radiation is what makes creatures immune to the plague, does that also
Yes.
mean radiation could actually kill the plague?
Oh, interesting thought. Yeah.
Sorry, just to go on that question.
No.
That's one of those
it's a good point,
unsolved
yes.
mysteries of the Warpath universe.
Yeah, I think, and it isn't really a big deal yet that the Marauders or the Orcs are immune. So it's mentioned here and there, but it wasn't also with this story here, but it's not really something we have seen like a big Marauder engagement against maybe some plague worlds or something like that. So there isn't something in the lore, some big event yet that is really, coupled with this information. It's mostly used for, there are dead zones infected by the plague. We send in our Marauder commandos because they can't be infected and they are good fighters. So let's see if it will be used a bit more in the future.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's a thread that they could really run down.
Yeah. What is really interesting with the metabolism of the Marauders, because we're talking about that right now anyway, is that on Gora they were mostly eating, like having a vegetable diet. Because I can think that there weren't as many maybe things you could kill and eat because maybe of the radiation. Not sure, but they were eating, maybe even because they were like a bit isolated, eating mostly vegetables. And
so
once the corporation... Sorry?
Or they just happened to, are they vegetarians then? Or are they just
No, they aren't. It happened to be that way. Yeah.
Okay.
And it changed when the corporations got hold of them, because they then had super nutrient protein things and actual actual meat for them and so on. And then that's why they got so bulky. They weren't as bulky before. And so this is the explanation why they got even stronger and more fearsome, because of the treatment through the GCPS. So that's also a little fun fact here. So Marshal Tongue now has this really, really great and effective fighting force. And if you're a mercenary, if you're a Marauder mercenary, you will hear from his exploits. He is effective, he wins things, he gets contracts, so many more join him. And his reputation grew with every successful contract completed. And then you get the news that Marshal Tongue isn't only like going around the frontier and doing some things, but the word spreads that he has now a base of operation. So the Predators settle on 5 worlds that aren't really accessible from the outside or hardly accessible, and where many races usually would die from this radiation sickness. So it's the perfect place to grow bigger and stronger from a perspective, not as an orc, but for the company.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about Marshal Tongue now, because this could be a nice tidbit to know. Okay, there is a bigger fighting force, and not only the smaller mercenary groups, but this is also a special orc, because what the humans didn't know is that he is actually the grandson of Chief Mahuar, and Chief Mahuar was the one Marauder who started the Mandrake Rebellion. So he's a living legend. Yes, he's a living legend for the Marauders. He's maybe even venerated, and he's really important for their history. And so now we have a direct descendant from the Chief Mahuar, who is well known, and Marshal Tongue, going by this name so that it won't be too obvious for the GCPS, because he also knows that if this would come out, he would be hunted down. So he adopted the name of Tongue and is working in secret to establish a new Marauder empire.
Well, it wouldn't be new empire; it would be the same empire. Oh no! Actually,
well, yeah.
I guess
maybe they didn't really have one the first time.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the first
major
galactic
empire. I guess
empire.
First empire that extends beyond Gora.
Yes. So the first time they really on a galactic scale would be united. So he wants to do that. He knows that he has to be careful because of the Black Company, because of the GCPS, because of the Council. They don't want this to happen, obviously. So that's why he's keeping it a secret and still recruiting more and more other groups. So we have a few names. We have the Stormforce, the Outriders, the Nomads. We get a few names for these other Marauder factions that join him, all under his banner. And his vision really is to not just be the Lord of Cabot here of these five worlds, but he really wants to unite all the Marauders from across the galaxy, make a new homeworld, free from corporate interference, and then they could conquer the galaxy from there. So really a big plan. But it couldn't stay hidden forever. That's then where the Enforcers appear, because the Enforcers then, while Tang is making his plans, more groups are joining him. The discovery was inevitable. Pathfinder units that were investigating the reports of unmarked Marauder ships transiting the corporate space toward the Maw quickly established that the problem would be really big and beyond that they imagined. So the Pathfinder units, as always, are the first ones moving independently and assessing the situation. And here it is. If so many Marauder ships are going to the same place, at some point it's discovered, and it was here. So we know there is something in place against a Marauder uprising. So the Pathfinders were sent to the worlds, and they saw that Tang had built a massive orc hold on these worlds, that it really wasn't just a little outpost or something, but this is some serious problem. And the word reached the ears of the Council of Seven, and the reaction was immediate and dramatic. The Black Company was ordered to action, and only 3 days later, the enforcement patrol group Hammer was already en route to the Orphic sector to cull this. Well, it's not an uprising yet, but to cull this gathering of forces before something big could happen.
I don't know if you call it an uprising, because they were, they made their fortress at that point. It's not really an uprising. It's more of like they're their own thing, and they're just getting attacked.
Yeah,
really.
maybe we used Empire before. It could be something like that. So to crush this new and this birth
growing
of a Marauder Empire. Yeah,
that sounds about right.
Yeah, the Black Company, they are trained. Their whole point is to be we already talked about it, to be the ones stopping the Marauders, hunting them down. And they are now sent here. And the Wyverns, so the flyers from the EPG Hammer, so the Enforcement Patrol Group Hammer, were used to go where things are really bad. So they knew, no problem, we can get in there without detection usually, and drop our troops where they are needed in the midst of combat, and then attack the Gorans or the Marauders. And the interesting thing is that Marauders were the shock troopers for the GCPS. The Enforcers then replaced them, and the Enforcers also have like these shock tactics. Shock and awe is their thing. Get in there quickly, disrupt the enemy forces. So that's exactly what the Hammer group is doing here. But they weren't as prepared for what was waiting for them in the Orphic sector, because this is on a scale that hasn't happened before in the universe since Mandrake Rebellion. There were only a few locations where they could safely slid into the Maw and beyond of the Maw, and because it's really, with these 3 neutron stars, it's a really small entrance. If you stray away from that, you get into the gravity well of one of the super dense stars and you're gone. So it's not as easy to have a hidden entrance. And that's what awaited them. They went through it, and almost as soon as they slowed from the faster than light travel, got out of this situation to get onto the planets. 2 of the 3 ships of the group were already crippled. The Marauders knew how to defend their sector well. They knew about this small entrance. They prepared. They had their forces ready. So 2 of the 3 ships were already crippled, engines set ablaze, so dead in space. A fleet of Marauder warships was waiting there, and they anticipated this Enforcer strike. And it was a massacre in the end, because the Enforcers couldn't move, or 2 of the 3 ships couldn't move because of the surgical strike just at the beginning. They couldn't maneuver. They began to return fire. It went the battle went around them in every direction, and one of the Wyverns was outright destroyed as one of the power cores was damaged by the ongoing Marauder ship fire. And while on the bridge of the command ship, they knew, okay, this is going really, really badly, and the first brief battle which could set the course for everything was already lost before it really started, at least for the Enforcers. So they had to do something. There was no way out of this mess. The space battle couldn't be won. So the commanding officer launched his Wyverns, launched some reports that were transmitted by the already destroyed Wyvern, and he had to launch his accusers, so the faster strike ships we also see in Firefight, for example. And they had to withdraw, get maybe the Wyvern away, and at least as far as they could, and then think about how they could somehow get a grip of the situation. So we see the Marauders are prepared. They know how to fight. They knew they would the Council or the Enforcers would be coming for them, and they actually destroyed big parts of a specialized group that was only there to hunt down and destroy Marauders. So I think that's quite a feat that they did there.
Definitely. So basically they're held out for. Did they hold out for ages, or the Marauders that? Yeah.
No, the story continues there because of the retreat. The Marauders can't completely destroy the other Wyverns, but they retreat, reach a safe distance from the Orc blockade, and a few of the Enforcers do planetfall actually with the accusers that were launched. They reach Cabot III, and Commander Montana, so the commanding officer, is with them on the ground. So he had to land without much of support because the other Wyverns were out. They only had the accusers to go into, no bigger dropships or something. So the accusers were well equipped. They were prepped for the Mass Assault. So they weren't just waiting for something to happen. So those who made it to the planet were well equipped for this operation, but no bigger support units were with them because they didn't have the dropships or the time to go through there because of the Marauder blockade. So limited numbers, but specialized and prepared. Montana then briefed his operators on the task ahead. So Marshal Tang, he then knew that he is called by another name. His actual name is Mahu Oran. So Mahu Oran is his birth name as the grandson of Maua, and he knew that Tang had to be taken out.
Mm-hmm.
So
how do you say it? Say that again? Mahu. What?
Mahu
say it again
Oran.
for me?
Mahu Oran.
Oran.
Yes.
Oran. Yeah.
So
Okay.
he knew he had to take Tang or Mahu Oran out because he had to send a message that this couldn't be let to happen. And then Tang, on the other hand, knew that he had to send out a message: don't come here. If the best of the best, if the Black Company hunting marauders comes in here and get destroyed in a few moments, it sends a message to the council: don't mess with us. But for that, he really had to go through with everything and get rid of the enforcers who made Planetfall. So Montana is quite a badass. We will see that. So Montana is known to be a savage of a human. So a man with the appearance of being born for nothing else but warfare.
Okay. So they're pretty much just a hardened guy. That's pretty much his life. Basically, he's like a Master Chief from like Halo.
Yeah, a bit, yes. So he was recruited into the Enforcer Corps in 985 from a prison barge. So he's one of those prisoners turned enforcers. Mantella has excelled as an enforcer. His natural size and strength were both enhanced by the program, and he has never hesitated to unleash his lethal brutality against any marauders because he's, as we know, commander of the Black Company. But he still has a stern respect for the marauders because he knows that they fight well. He knows that they are strong, that they are also tactical. They have like tactical geniuses, maybe, or at least he knows that they are good at tactics. So he has a respect for them, but still hunts them down brutally. And maybe I think it's fun because it's a bit of a mirror match. I mean, if you read it up, he looks like a marauder just as a human, He's really good, he's savage and so on, but he's still intelligent enough for warfare and to not only charge ahead. So
he's basically like the best of the best, really, when it comes to fighting. Yeah.
Yes. So his strike team, or strike force, is now on Cabot. No reinforcements, whereas the Marauders have the full might of their forces over the planets and also in orbit. So he has to be smart and precise. He is someone who fights from the front, and when he took the job to taking out Tang, he knew he had to do it himself. So they had to have a bit of another style of warfare than they usually use. So the shock and awe was over. They couldn't drop in and eliminate with pure force and like a fast strike. So he had to hit the outposts in surgical strikes. So fighting smart. They had to secure the resources on the planet to get a hold, to have enough for a longer warfare, raiding the outposts, killing as many while avoiding large-scale engagements. Because he knew the enforcers would be back at some point, but it wouldn't be soon. They had to get the word out. They had to muster forces to come help them. So he had to be prepared and hold on as long as possible until reinforcements were there, and maybe even getting his target himself if possible. So he had to gather intelligence on these orcs, really know what is going on, because he knew something was off here, but he didn't know exactly what was going on yet with Tang and this stronghold of Marauders. So Tang was, on the other hand, really sure of himself. He had just won the first engagement. And I mean, we are speaking about 3 warships 3 Enforcer warships going here, being completely decimated in the first contact. So he now saw that as a sign that he had a great destiny just ahead of him, because this was something unheard of, to be that effective against the Enforcers. So he has sent his message. He knew now that they will be coming back because they couldn't be eradicated completely, and even if they would have happened to be as successful, the Council would still know that something bad happened if 3 warships, 3 Wyverns didn't return. So now everything has changed for him. He now is in the open. It's not a secret anymore. And for him, now it really only began. And Montana, on the other hand, is still on the planet. He has his forces. The Marauders couldn't get rid of them until now. So we're really in the state of what's happening next. It's a stage in this conflict where we only recently, so in the last installments of Firefight, was this mentioned. It's also something that aligns with the starter set for Firefight. So the Marauder versus Enforcers starter set is on Cabot III, so this is also the backstory for the starter set.
Yeah, it's called the Battle of Cabot III 2-player starter set. So we'll link that bit down below if anyone is interested.
Yeah, exactly. So it sets the stage, and it really is something where we will have to wait where it's going. Because if Tang is able to succeed, this will shift really the big player, the Marauders, into being one of the maybe most successful factions. If they have a stronghold they can so easily defend, and if they rally more forces, the Marauders are excellent at that. If they have the resources to really get their equipment going, and maybe not using only old equipment from the uprising days, this could really change. And then on the other hand, if Montana is able to take out Tang, maybe it's the last time the Marauders are able to really get that big, because the retaliation from the Council and from the GCPS would be immense.
Or it becomes a martyr, and then sometimes they can get even stronger.
Yeah. So it can go in many directions from here.
Correct.
And
so we don't know the conclusion yet, right?
We don't know the conclusion.
Okay.
Yes. So we are because of the nature of the releases, we are in the living universe. This is one of the newer releases. I mean, this is now 2 years old, this lore bit, like 2 years in our actual time, not in the Warpath universe. So maybe even in the Epic Warpath or in one of the next book releases, we will see where this is going. But I think it works that it's open. I think the Marauders have to win this at least a little bit, because if they want to be a really big faction, and not only that's on Strike Forces or a bit bigger Firefight ones, but they are in Epic Warpath. They are a big army. They have to have some kind of centralized leadership. They have to have some kind of bigger leader, where okay, they aren't just a faction of a few guys here, a few guys there. You can't do it on Gora.
Yeah, they need to grow into an actual force, and I think that's what's kind of missing from the Warpath universe as well. Is that you always hear about the GCPS being very dominant, but there's very few big kind of empires. You got the Forge Fathers, and you got the Asterians, but you don't really have like the Marauders a justified location where that's their space, and I think it's time for that to rise and for them to have their own little collection of planets, especially Goro, and the more we actually see them develop, we can actually see more of that intelligence, more of that culture kind of become more evident. Because, as you said, the uprising, they're using equipment that they've essentially just had for the uprising. We haven't really seen what Marauder equipment made themselves really looks like. It's all just inherited kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see that evolve in lore and also on the table.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Cool.
We got a few bits of actual cultural background also through Montana, because, as I already said, for an enforcer, he is your Rambo badass, crazy good guy, because his thoughts go around. Okay, we have to be careful here, and then he's pulling back the priming lever of his Genling 45, and then he has this thought, which is just great, and I just will read it out loud here. It wasn't as if he was trapped on an isolated alien world with an army of hostile marauders to take care of. They were trapped on Cabot III with him. So
it was like that Rorschach quote from Watchmen.
Exactly. You're trapped in here with me. So I really like that bit, because he knows it's not like he's just here and maybe, oh no, everything collapsed around me. My whole strike force is gone. We're just a fraction. No. He knows he has fought all his enforcer life, at least. He has fought marauders. It will go on there. So I love that bit. And he also knows, because of that, he knows how they fight. So he knows that the marauders are venerating or maybe honoring brute force, while being intelligent,
respectful.
being yes, having respect for a sign of force, for really showing that you are stronger than your opponent, is something he could work off. And we already heard that he is exceptionally good at that. So this is something that he will be also using to show no mercy, show no weakness. And then he will be winning the respect from them, and that could be something that might help him survive or even lead him to victory. But that we will have to see.
So I'm getting some like Klingon vibes from what Marauders are. I don't know if you're much of a Star Trek fan, but it really feels like Klingons. They're kind of like just got that honor, got that savagery, but they're a little bit more intelligent. But from the outside, people just see them as brutes and see them as just idiots. But in reality, they're not. They're capable of creating their own ships and creating their own culture, and ultimately they've got their respect there. But they definitely could dominate if they got their shit together and actually work together. So it'll be interesting to see where they take it, because I'm interested to see how they treat, because I know there is a bit of lore being plugged into Epic Warpath, so it'll be interesting to see how they explain that, and whether Epic Warpath takes place in the modern day, or do we jump ahead where all these empires have kind of, you got the Marauders, maybe they've got a lot stronger, or it'll be interesting to see how that all meshes together, because as you said, right now if you jump into Epic Warpath, the lore wouldn't make sense too much, because the Marauders haven't really formulated a really massive force yet. So it'll be interesting. I'm assuming, based off where we're going with the story, that Cabot III was successful towards the Marauders. But that's just because we know about Epic Warpath. I don't know whether they're going to explain that for other means, or maybe they lost Cabot III. He become a pariah or some kind of some icon as a demonstration of what Marauder should be doing, and then that ends up getting them to formulate somewhere else in the galaxy. I don't know, but I'll be interested to see what they do. Because do you know what's the actual release date for Epic Warpath now? Do you know?
I think it should be shipping in July, something about that. And maybe the first thing sitting at the shelf in August, something around that, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not too long.
Too
maybe
far,
a bit more than a month or 2 months, something like that.
Yeah, hopefully I can get my hands on a PDF code because I don't play the game. I'm definitely probably not going to play the game because it's not really my thing. But I'll be interested in the lore nonetheless. I mean, there's so many books that I've got that are just lore based because I don't. I mean, I'm famously never played a game of Kings of War yet. I run the Kings of War wiki, so it's just one of those things that I'm quite interested to see where they go with it.
I mean, this hobby has so many aspects to it. There are people who have never played a game but painted over 1,000 miniatures. Then, I mean, like you, there are some who love the lore and, love it from a perspective that it's a tabletop game, but you don't have to play it. Then there are others who only play and never listen to the lore or something like that, or read the lore. So it's so open, but it's something why I really am enjoying doing these Warpath lore ones, because I feel like most of the players are playing the games because they are just really good, but are still a bit, think about other IPs when playing. And now we have so much lore and so much interesting points where it's really going off. I mean, this escalation from a Marauder perspective is rather new. And I think it's something that also Christopher Verspeaks said, that it's all a bit culminating maybe. Everything is like going bigger. We know the Nameless aren't waiting around anymore. They really want to go all out. We've seen it a few times now. That's also maybe something we could talk about in one of the next episodes, because we haven't really touched on them, for example. We know the Night Stalkers are here now. We have the Marauders uniting. We have Forgefather clans who are eager to fight the GCPS. We have the Sons of the Darkstar who are maybe creating a shift in the Dwarf Society or something like that. We have Asterians who aren't really happy with how the Tesseract is acting. So we have so many...
Don't forget Matsudan.
Yeah, we have the Matsudan who are now all in, who are only supporting the Asterians and now are all in really fighting on the galactic scale. So it's really escalating in the last years, and the reps are forming together. We have hints in the lore that they are more organized than ever. We had it on Tertia. We had Blaine being hired by the council, but then betraying also the council and siding with the reps and revolutionaries. At least for now, it's open-ended there. So I really feel like it's gonna blow up.
There's a lot coming, and and I think what's helping is obviously with Halo, the success of Halo, and that being modeled off the Dead Zone engine, you could say, or however you want to describe it. It's bringing a lot more eyes to Dead Zone and the Warpath universe, and it'll be really cool. There's definitely things cooking. And I think the best that we can do is make sure we're vocal about it. We talk about it because we love getting passionate about it. We're critical where we should be critical, and we'll also just explore it and complement it when the lore actually fits to something that we really enjoyed. So I think there's so many storylines cooking at the moment, so many storylines going, and I think it's all about supporting and just making sure you speak up if there's any particular interest or anything that you are interested in the Universal Warpath. So on saying that, make sure you leave a comment down below, or if you're listening to this on Spotify, or you're listening to this on Apple, or however the podcast things, you leave a comment there as well, because we see those. So if there's anything that you're interested in, want us to talk more about, hell, if you even want us to do a book review of maybe the Containment Protocols compilation, or even the First Strike Alpha Edition book, we're more than happy to. Just pop a comment below, and we can explore what you feel like should be explored more in the Warpath universe, because there's so many different stories all over the show.
Yeah. I mean, that's also the fun part. We have seen quite a few comments that had said, "Oh, we're so happy that this is something we're doing," and some questions about, hey, do this faction or something with this faction, and I love that. So please keep that coming, because we want also to not only cover something we like and find interesting, but also that's something for you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this can be a three-way street. It'll be me, Claudio, and whoever's out there. You can tell us what to talk about. And on that note, it's a good segue to actually mention some comments that we received from the last episode on our YouTube, XM4. So we had Michael Gray, Michael Gray 1351, who actually was the writer of the infestation supplement that we actually talked about. He said, I had a lot of fun writing the infestation. I can't say why can't I say that word? Anyway, infestation supplement. I'm so happy people are still getting enjoyment out years later. So it's so cool to actually hear the actual writer. I think it was 2014 is when they originally wrote it. I can't remember.
It's quite old now, yes.
Quite old. And it's so cool to hear the person that actually wrote it, listen to our or more Claudio's perspective on it, and it's so cool to know you're still out there. And if you actually want to come in and talk about it, reach out. We're more than happy to have you on if you want. Another comment we had is, now these usernames I'm going to butcher them a little bit. We've got Will During 1290, all one word, so I might have pronounced something that wrong. They said, great episode, excellent work. Love the Forge Fathers working secretly to push the Corp off planet and then receiving karma tenfold, which is pretty much the gist of it. The GCPS tries to do something, or corporation within the GCPS tries to do something dodgy, and eventually they get karma handed to them. That is actually a common trend within the universe, and which is a good, because the corporations are definitely evil. They do get a lot more wins than fails, but I do like it when they do fail. It's great. And the final comment was from, this one I'm not quite sure. It's Mitch Kaminsky 9791. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. It's an old one. They said, because we did talk about a lot of the Veer-myn in the last episode, they said, now I have to add some more rats just because I saw this episode. And you encouraged it, Claudio, because you replied saying you can never have enough rats, which I would agree with. And they said, I have
left out. You can never have enough rats to kill, but hey.
You said, although you're a non-Veer-myn hater. So, and then they replied with some saying you mean Enforcer, and they have about 1 to 2 terrors waiting to be painted and are tangled. And it's so cool that there's a bit of crossover between Ratkin and Veer-myn, so you can actually use similar models on both games, which gives you a lot more options than some other factions out there as well, which is worth noting. So those are the 3 comments that we had there. So if you do want us to read out your comment, or just want to reach out to us, pop a comment down below, and as I said, either on Spotify or on the YouTubes. There we go. So I guess we'll wrap things up. Is there anything else you want to say there, Claudio?
Maybe one last thing, because we talked about the culture aspect, I think, and we talked about tongue. I would love to just add a few more sentences that flesh out the universe and are just the perfect bit of information in just a few lines, because the backstory for Tongue says that he was raised, and he's born on Gora, and he was raised in the education camps, where they teach students the ways of the GCPS, languages, history, benefits of capitalism over any other system of thought or belief. So
what are the benefits of capitalism?
Yeah, that you can get rich fast,
Really?
That everyone has a chance.
I don't know if that's true.
Cough,
I don't know
cough,
if that's
cough.
exactly true. Yeah.
Yeah, well, in the way of the GCPS thinking, that's the perfect thing. Everyone profits from capitalism because a few profit of it more than everyone else. So this bit says that the Gorans are then indoctrinated, if you want so, from the beginning by the GCPS. They try to really alter their thoughts and maybe even erase the normal traditions. But older Marauders always show the young ones how it's done and show the culture. So it's really also a culture war there between the GCPS trying to get the Marauders on their side and having like official official stories about the Mandrake uprising and so on. And on the other hand, the old traditions still prevail because the Marauders can't be broken. So it's not as effective as the GCPS maybe think, which is also speaking for the Marauders that they are able to hide this, to hide that they still teaching their culture and so on. And while this is a really, again, cunning, intelligent way to do it, we have more of the savage thing too, because one of the rituals that Mahu Oran then goes through is when he left Gora as a young orc. He was still, like a normal dude. But then when he was the commander of the Predators, he returned to Gora and underwent the ritual of chieftains. So you can't just be like the smartest orc and be a commander. You also have, if you really want to be a commanding orc in a bigger force, you have to go through this ritual. And this is to be the leader of tribes, not only of a group. So he had many tests and trials, and in the end you have to hunt and slay a wild moorbeast. And the moorbeasts are known for being really savage, big-mouthed, dog-like creatures. And the moorbeasts on Gora are easily twice the size of those that we normally see the Marauders deploying. So he had to really
they're probably
kill a
like
monster.
radiation influenced, right?
Yes, again, probably. So we here now know that the moorbeasts also probably are a bit buffed through the radiation, and he then kills the pack leader that has killed the 5 previous would-be chiefs. So he really is someone who also thinks that he is destined to something bigger, and in the way of the tradition of the orcs and marauders, he shows it time and time again. So this is a nice little last tidbit I really wanted to talk about, because again, it's a savage tradition to say, okay, kill the biggest beasts that are deadly, even after you have achieved so much being a commander, but you now want to be chieftain, and then they die. So that's not really something that you would say is a cultured approach to leadership. But it's just so Marauder-like. It's both,
and it helps paint the culture, right? It's like you've got the intelligence side of it, and we've seen a little bit of that. But you also can't forget they do have. There's a reason why they are categorized as being savage. It's because they do have certain traditions that are classified as a bit more savage. So it's like you have to balance it with they are still savage, as in terms of a lot of the cultural kind of probably more historical kind of things that they have still held on to, but they've got this really cool intelligence there that they know when to act dumb, and that's a form of intelligence. If you know when to act dumb and you don't reveal how smart you are, sometimes the smartest person in the room is the one that tries to act the dumbest. So it's I do like the kind of the two sides of that culture, which I really hope that we can explore more when the Marauders have established themselves as a bigger force in the universe. They can start showing that intelligence a bit more, because they don't need to act dumb anymore. They don't need to invite these other factions into their culture and act dumb. They can just be smart all the time because they're not going to be threatened. So it's super interesting. I like that.
Yeah, and that's why I really like the storyline here, because it opens up so much more storytelling for the Marauders. And once again, this balance between intelligent and savage is great. And it's also shown in the story. In the end, he kills the big moorbeast, not by heading in there head first and relying on his brute strength, but he made it smart. So he lured it into his own kill zone, had traps, striking from hidden positions, retreating, and so on. And again, it's a savage ritual, but he only succeeds because he's doing it the right way. So with cunning and intelligence. And then this is also something that is recognized in the culture. And I think maybe we will end this episode with a quote, the last quote from this story, if you want to. I'll read it to you. Okay.
Oh wait! Before we do that, we'll do the final things. Make sure anyone that wants to send us an email, they send it to kingsofwarwiki@gmail.com. I look after that one specifically, and then I'll be able to read it on the next episode if you want. Also, make sure you join our Facebook group, Mantic Universe Podcast. Also, we obviously our YouTube and our Spotify and all that other stuff. And if you want, you can support us on Patreon. Chuck us $1. That helps with the recording. And we're doing a few extra things. We're going to be doing some live action stuff, which will be really exciting on our YouTube. I mentioned that earlier. That's all that. All right, done. All right, that's all the plugs that I need to do. Otherwise, Chris get on my back if I don't mention that. So, all right, you go.
We love the interaction, so please really join us and have fun with us. Besides these episodes where we are talking and you have to listen. So
exactly.
Okay, so then for the last bit of this episode, the quote. Eventually, exhausted and bleeding, the beast reached the place of Mahu Oran's choosing. Only then did he strike it down with the same Runka blade his grandfather had carried into battle and take grisly proof of his deed. The fangs of the beast adorn his armor today, a reminder to all other orcs of his status, as is the Runka blade that hangs from his belt.
That's a perfect way of signing off.
All right. Then, have a good one, and bye-bye.
Hey, everyone. Bye.